Breaking Par is brought to you by Par Breakers Golf Academy online instruction, video swing analysis, and e-learning courses, and powered by Swing Guru 3D swing analysis software. The right move. To find out more, go to www.parbreakers.com. Welcome to this week's episode of Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the only weekly golf instruction podcast that helps you take control of your game. Now here's your host, the founder of Par Breakers Golf Academy, Bernard Sheridan.
Brandon, welcome to Breaking Par. Thanks so much for taking the time out to be with us today. So you're really even, I know you just mentioned, we were talking before you went on the air, that you're kind of like on a little mini vacation. So thanks for making some time for us.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm happy to do so. I appreciate the opportunity.
So give us a little bit of insight into one, because I kind of let the folks out there in Par Nation know a little bit about you, but give us a little bit more insight into how did you get involved in what you do, and then what made you decide to dive into writing a book?
Well, it's been an interesting journey for me. I actually did not. I didn't start out as the typical golf professional. Golf was the only job I ever had. I was running carts by the time I was 15 and worked all through high school and most of college. But I was actually planning to go to medical school and got all the way through my junior year in college and changed my mind to be something different. Long story short, I took a medical ethics class that scared me to death. And I had all my requirements met, actually had the entrance exam, they call it the MCAT, scheduled, and changed my mind to be a golf pro. I thought my mom was going to have an absolute heart attack that day when I came home and told her that. But when I decided I wasn't going to go to med school, golf was the only other thing I knew. It's the only other thing I'd ever done. So I thought, let's get a job in golf. And so I kind of got involved, got involved in the PGA apprentice program, started in the golf shop as an assistant professional, worked my way up to head professional, and was teaching kind of the whole way along the time, and eventually just made the decision to become a full-time teacher. And that's kind of the history of how I got to where I am. I'd always wanted to write a book. I always thought it would be really neat to write a book in whatever your profession was from the time I was as a kid. But as I got into teaching full-time, and particularly the area of short game, I started to see some problems, not some problems, but some interesting things in our profession, especially regarding the short game. I didn't find that there was a lot of information out there relative to what you see in the full swing. Meaning, for every one short game specific book, there are 15 full swing specific books. And I found that some of the information was kind of interesting. And by interesting, I mean not very well thought out, not very well put together, and what I considered a little bit random. Certainly there are some really great books out there, and I'm not throwing them all under the table. I just mean as a general rule. And so it became something that I thought would be really neat if I could put out a book or even a series of books on short game that really would help I would call an average golfer, somebody between the handicap range of maybe 25 to 15, really figure out a way to start to build a short game. Instead of going to the lesson tee, I talk about this in my intro, going to the lesson tee and taking a full swing lesson for an hour and, 45, 50 minutes in, you say to your instructor, well, actually, I'm not real good at chipping. Can you help me there? And he maybe gives you 5 minutes of, hey, put the ball, in the back of your stance and lean the handle forward and hit down on it. That's about the extent of it. And I just didn't feel like that was enough information for such a gigantic part of the game for everybody that plays golf. And so that's kind of what started me on this mission. What started me on this mission, and eventually ended up writing it. And I'm pretty happy with the product. I think it came out really well. I'm excited for it to hit the market.
Now, when you started to write, was there a Like, were you starting to like gather data or look at different ways, and like how did you go about starting the book and deciding on all the different topics that you could cover when it comes to, and short game is a pretty wide range, like you said. I mean, it's like, it's not just chipping. It can actually be, I consider short game like anything inside of 40 yards. So it's like small pitches, chips, Texas wedge, things like that. A lot of different ways to do it. Flop shots. I mean, we can go on and on with all the different types of shot selections that you can use, methods, techniques, where the ball is in your stance, what you want it to do, things like that. So what type of things do you cover in there, and really, how did you come upon deciding what to cover?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because it was kind of an interesting journey. And I think what you just said described a lot of people think about short game, is that it's this giant collection of a lot of different types of skills, meaning that the chip shot is vastly different than the pitch shot, is vastly different from the bunker shot, is vastly different. I'm not so sure I agree with that. And what I mean by that is, if you understand the basic framework of how the geometry of the circle we swing on works, if you understand some basics about bounce and angle of attack, meaning how the golf club comes into the ground, then I think it can take away a lot of the confusion around short game. And the short game simply becomes something you look at, where you look at the situation in front of you and then fit the different pieces in, meaning A, how far do I have to carry this thing? And B, what kind of trajectory does it need to have? And really, those are, for a 17 handicap, if you can answer those two questions accurately every time you come upon a short game shot, you're going to keep the ball on the green. Meaning, if you're really close to the edge of the green and the pin's really far away, and you can appreciate that I need a lower trajectory shot, and just with a couple of small changes to the dynamics of the bottom of the circle and the angle of attack, without getting too technical, then you're going to hit a shot that's going to land and roll and release back somewhere near the flag. I'm not saying you're going to be good enough to get it within 10 feet, but you're going to give yourself the chance to make a bogey. And if everybody that played this game bogeyed every single hole they played, we'd have a lot happier golfers out there in the world than what we have right now. I think the average score is about 102 or 103. So if somebody could shoot 90 when they play, they'd be real happy. And so, make no mistake, when I set out to write this book, I didn't write it for, a tour player or an elite amateur. While I think those folks will get something out of this book, I wrote it more as a strategy for someone to use, so that they could take all the different short game shots and find a method of approach to be able to hit them. Instead of looking at the chip shot separate from the pitch shot, it's how can I apply a motion and change the trajectory and the carry distance accordingly. Because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that separates a pitch shot from a chip shot, is it flies a little farther and it has a little different trajectory. And so that's kind of how I wrote the book. And I came upon this. I was fortunate in my previous position before I took over where I teach now. I did a lot of golf schools, meaning, I'd have guys in town for 2, 3, 4 days at a time. And it was a very intensive, almost a type of immersion, into golf instruction. And while that certainly has its disadvantages in how you learn, one of the advantages to the instructor is they have to learn how to give a lot of information in a very small amount of time. And you have to learn how to give it to people in a way that they can kind of assimilate it in their head and then take it home and work on it in different pieces, if that makes sense. You kind of have to lay building blocks. And so I got, without even knowing it, I got really good at presenting the whole of short game in a very systematic way over a very short amount of time. And so when I sat down to write the book, all I did was think back and say, okay, if I had a student in front of me for an hour or 2 hours, out of a 2-day golf school, and I was going to take them from the edge of the green all the way back to, 60 yards away, how would I teach them? how did I do it in the golf school format? And I simply ended up writing that down in words, and that was the book. So the book starts with what I call the common denominators, and meaning the things that are present regardless of the style or length or trajectory of the shot you're going to hit. And there are 4 or 5 of them. Things like keeping the hands in the middle of the body. Things like having your body release through the shot. Those are present regardless of what style of shot you're hitting, whether you're hitting it 40 yards or 4 yards. And then each individual chapter of the book simply covers a different kind of shot. So it starts with the bump and run, which is also known as a chip shot, really close to the green. It moves back to, from 5 to 15 yards away from the edge of the green. I call that shot a hinge and hold. That's just the terminology I labeled it. From 15 out to about 40 yards is what I call the mini wedge. And then from 40 out to essentially a full swing, I call a pitch. Lots of different terminology out there. That's just the way I chose to label it. But that's essentially how the book is laid out. And then there are a couple of chapters on some special shots like lob shots and bunker shots that are simply variations of the same methodology or same technique. So a lot more, the book is a lot more about a plan of approach to hitting a short game shot than actually how to hit the short game shot. So when I started out collecting all the data and all the research that I wanted to put in there, I just couldn't find a way to write the book to where it wasn't too technical, for the 17, 18 handicap. And so eventually I changed my mind and decided to kind of write it this way. And again, I'm really excited for how it turned out. It's about 7 or 8 chapters. I can't remember. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's 7 chapters and then a practice chapter.
Okay.
Meaning how you practice the different shots. I'm excited for it. So,
I mean, do you find that a lot of, the average player, and just like we spoke about, 15 to 25 handicap, do you find a lot of those players are trying to fly the ball as close to the hole as they can in a lot of these shots? I mean, I know that I find that a lot. It's almost like they think it's like basketball, like they're going to swish it or something. As opposed to, using a lower trajectory or a bump and run or things of that nature, or just picking a spot where they want it to land and then let it release to the hole, as opposed to trying to knock it really close and getting it to check up and stop, like right next to the hole. Do you find that with a lot of those players and then they end up, at least I do, and then they end up like when they try to pull that shot off, a lot of times they blade it and it's just flying over the green, and they're actually coming back maybe the same distance from just the other side.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. One of my common denominators is the landing zone. And yes, I agree 1,000%. That is the single biggest problem, in my opinion, with most amateurs and their approach to short game. Meaning that they don't really have a plan for where they're going to land it. They're just going to try to land it next to the hole.
Right.
And obviously it causes problems. And the way I describe it in the book is the biggest reason that's a problem is because if you try to fly it to the hole, then you're using absolutely the single most complicated swing you could make to hit the shot. Meaning the bigger the golf swing gets, the more complicated it is. So if you want to hit it as far as possible, which would be landing it right next to the hole, then you've made the most complicated swing you possibly could make to try to hit that shot. And so I talk to people in the book. I talk about landing it on the landing zone, which is 3 to 5 paces onto the surface of the green, regardless of where you are relative to the edge of the green, and regardless of where the hole is relative to the landing zone. You're trying to land it on the landing zone, right? No farther than you have to. And the theory behind that is now you're using the simplest possible swing you can use, meaning the smallest motion required to get the ball on the green. Because at the end of the day, manipulating the trajectory to control the roll is really pretty simple. It's a matter of changing golf clubs first, then changing the lean of the shaft at address second, meaning if you want to hit it with forward shaft lean, the ball's going to go lower. Neutral to backward shaft lean, it'll go higher, and then fine-tuning with the angle of the club face. And those are pretty simple concepts that anybody can get. But it's funny you say that, because I think you hit the nail on the head. And that was one of the biggest reasons that I decided to write the book, because I saw that problem in the world, and I didn't see anybody trying to fix it. And I'm not saying that nobody was out there trying to fix it. I just didn't see a lot of it. Meaning, I saw, I could see an instructor teach somebody how to hit a chip shot, or teach somebody how to hit a pitch shot, but I didn't see a whole lot about how to know the difference when to use a chip and when to use a pitch. And so people end up grabbing their highest lofted wedge, right? That used to be 56, and now it's gone to 60, and now there's some 64s out there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they just try to make a huge swing and try to fly it all the way to the hole and hope it stops. And it either, whether that's from a lack of education, or they want it to look cool, or I don't know why they do it. But that was an entire chapter in my book concerning the landing zone and the need, actually the lack of need, to fly it all the way to the hole.
Yeah, I call it the Mickelson Syndrome.
Yeah, maybe.
And it's just because, people see him do it. But you know what? This is a guy who, works at that shot and can pull it off. And I've seen him not use it too, but a lot of times he does use it. And I think that people think that that's what you're supposed to do around the green, as opposed to, I'm a lot of, I guess the way that I found out really what worked best was when I began to play, there was a finishing hole that had a tree that was essentially in the road if you wanted to hit a high shot. So you had to figure out a way to get the trajectory down lower and to stop the ball. So then you had to figure out, where the heck am I going to land it? If I land it in the middle of the green, it's not going to be enough time to stop the ball near the hole. So what do I have to do? So, I kind of figured that stuff out by trial and error, because it was imperative that, and it was a dog leg left, and there was a tree about, I want to say, 75 to 80 yards on the left-hand side, and then there was one maybe 15 yards from the green on the right. So it was one of those holes where if you couldn't hit a perfect draw and thread the eye of a needle, you were either going to be on the right side with getting blocked out by a tree, or if you were lucky, you were on the left side and you didn't have anything blocking you out, and then you could hit one of those high soft shots, because there was a bunker on that side also that you had to clear. So you really didn't have to. And I also try to let students know that another reason why you don't have to hit it in the air so much is, what do you got to carry? Are you carrying? Are you carrying a bunker? Or are you carrying, or is there a mouth of the green there where it's just fairway and you can actually bounce it up there? A lot of people don't think about those kind of things.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the tour player comment, because I get that all the time with students, especially when I'm teaching more elite students. And I've introduced the exact same concepts to PGA Tour players in the past. And I always get that same argument, right, from all of them. Well, so-and-so doesn't do it that way, or I never see that out there. And here's my comment. Two things. First of all, you're talking about the most talented guys in the world.
Right.
Right? So they can do some things that most other people can't.
Yep.
And do them very well, because they're the most talented guys in the world, and because they work on it, or they have the capacity to work on it 8 hours a day.
Yep.
Right? Or most people don't have day jobs that involve playing golf. The second comment I'll always make to that is, wow, think about how good they could be.
That's true,
they would
too.
Consider it, right? But just because they do it that way doesn't mean it's the best way.
Sure.
And I don't say that to try to give my way more credibility. I'm just saying that's an option. Is what if Mickelson didn't try to do that every time he hit a short game shot? My God, how good could he be?
Well, look at how
15 majors.
Sure,
now,
look at how when he used to always hit a draw. And then they used to say, look, Phil, if you want to, you got to think about maybe, aren't you a little upset that you're the best player in the world who hasn't won a major yet? So then what is he? Oh, well, I'm never going to change my style. That's who I am. I'm a swashbuckler. I'm this, I'm that. All of a sudden he changes to a cut, and the floodgates open up. So it's, I mean, even players of that caliber sometimes think there's only one way to do it. And there's never one way to do it. There's always tremendous amount of alternatives that are there,
Right.
just like life. I mean, you don't have to do
Yeah.
everything exactly by the book just because Phil Mickelson did it this way. I mean, or Ben Hogan is more
Right.
what we get a lot of as instructors. Everybody, well, Ben Hogan or Jack Nicklaus did it this, so if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me.
Right.
And I try to explain to a lot of them, like you said, these people have a tremendous talent on top of having a lot more time to
Right.
hone that talent. So if you're going to do that, go out there and fool around. Try different trajectories. Do different things. Try different clubs. You don't have to chip everything with a pitching wedge or a sand wedge. You can use a 7-iron, an 8-iron, a 9-iron. Fool around with things. Look at landing areas. Look at how much the ball is going to release. Get a little creative and mess around with these things.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that about the different clubs. I get that one all the time too. Well, I only use my 56, and so I take people through this scenario. I said, okay, how far do you hit your full 8-iron? Well, I hit it 145 yards. Whatever they say. I said, okay. So let's say you hit it 145 yards on number 2, and then you hit a great drive on number 3, and you're 160 yards from the green. You just hit your 8-iron harder, right? And they look at me like I've got 3 eyes, and they're like, well, no, I used a 7-iron. I said, then why on earth, when you come up to the next hole and you're 30 yards away from the green, do you just hit the same club harder when you could just go to a different club and hit the exact same shot? Think about how much more challenging this game would be if we only had one golf club and we had to make a different swing every time we needed to hit a shot instead of making the same swing with 13 different golf clubs. And they all kind of look at me and they're like, well, wow, that kind of makes a lot more sense. If I don't have to change the way I move to get variable options, then that's a lot easier than trying to make adjustments. And so that usually leads me into, now I've got them, right? Usually when I say that. So that makes the next part of the conversation easier to have. But I saw exactly what you're talking about, and I kept seeing it, and I kept seeing it, and I kept seeing it. And so that's ultimately why I decided that, when I write my first book, I want to write it on this because I was passionate about it. It's teaching short game takes up about 80% of my total teaching time now. I'm slowly but surely becoming labeled a short game specialist. I didn't set out for that, but it just so happened that when I was trying to get people better, I could get people better faster, teaching that part of the game, and so it became more and more and more of what I was doing. So when I decided I want to write my first book, what better topic, in my opinion, to write it on? And that's kind of how I came to where we are.
Yeah, I know too that with the nice thing about working on a short game is that people actually a lot of times have enough room in their own yard to work on those
Right.
kind of shots. So instead of having to, let's say, go to a driving range or set up a net and not really see ball flight or see what's going on, you can drop some balls in your backyard and maybe drop a few towels on the ground or a couple of trash pail lids or something like that, and try to fly, run them up there,
That's right.
do different things, and then go in and and you're home and you're in your backyard. So it's just go out there for 10, 15, 20 minutes after
Right.
dinner or something. So it makes it where it's a great way for players to knock a heck of a lot of shots off their score and be able to actually have the time to work on something like that, because you don't have to, let's say, drive 10 miles to your local driving range
Right.
and hit drivers all, or hit your full shots for an hour and then come back, and now you used 2.5 hours going and coming, and it's like, I just don't have that kind of time. But everybody has 10, 15 minutes to
That's
go
right.
out back and just work on some short game stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, huge difference. So give us a little bit of information as to how our listeners can find this book, and when is the book going to be released? I know that we're taping this show at the end of June. It's about a week out after, well, actually Bubba Watson just won the Travelers yesterday. And so that gives you an idea as to when this was recorded. So when do you believe that the book will be available for our listeners to go and get?
Yeah, so as the book has been finished for quite some time, meaning the manuscript is complete and the pictures have been taken, and so now it's kind of in the hands of the team that are putting it in the layout and moving the pictures around, and we're getting the captures for the captions for the pictures and all that complete. So I would say absolute fastest within a couple of weeks, which would put it about the middle of July. I would say at the worst case around the 1st of August.
Okay, so when everybody hears this show, the book's going to be available.
The book will be out. Yeah,
so and that's true. So, and give us the title of the book again.
Yeah, so the official title of the book is going to be called The Wedge Book, an Owner's Manual for Your Short Game. That's the full complete title. The cover of the book is done. I couldn't be happier with the design team that I worked with on the cover. A really cool cover with a picture of a gigantic wedge that's just covered in mud. It's really awesome. But yeah, that's the official title of the book, and I'm going to sell it on Amazon. So if you were to go to Amazon and just type in the Wedge Book, I presume that it will come up that way. I wouldn't think that anybody would be releasing another title called the Wedge Book at the same time I am, so I assume you would find mine. And then you're always going to be welcome to go to my website, which is just my full name, .com, BrandonStooksbury.com, and there'll be links all over the place that will take you to Amazon directly to where you can find the book. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to sell it in digital format. Let me re-say that. I'm going to sell it in the digital format. I just haven't decided yet whether I'm going to go through Amazon or whether I'm going to sell it through my own private webpage. And I probably won't make that decision for a little while until the book has been out for a few weeks or a couple of months anyway. So really the only way you're going to be able to get the book is to buy the paperback edition in the beginning, and then I hope to find a way, at least the best way, to sell it digitally. But Amazon, the Wedge Book, and that'll take you right to it.
Have you ever thought about doing an audio book of that?
I haven't. I can't say that I've really put a lot of thought into that at all. But now that you mention it, that might be something I need to consider. I don't know if people would like to hear my funky Southern accent, on the audiobook. I might need to hire some Australian or some guy from England or something to say it. But yeah, that's a thought that I haven't really concerned myself too much with. But maybe I'll do some checking into it. It's just another media, for people to have.
I know for me, I'm a big fan of audiobooks because I can. I usually travel a good distance to where I teach, and it's nice to be able to listen to that stuff. And of course, with podcasting, I listen to a lot of podcasts, even though I have my own podcast, and because I really enjoy that format, and it's a good way to maybe go hand in hand. If I have a book, now I have all the pictures, I can listen to the audio of it, and maybe it doesn't always have to be read by the author. Like you said, a lot of times it's not, okay? And sometimes it is, and I don't think that your funky voice is as funky as you think it is. Because I'm sure that everybody's hearing and understanding every word you're saying on this podcast. But I kind of like the idea when an actual author reads the book, because you're hearing it and he's kind of, you can get more out of it that way. I find.
Sure.
Yeah. But and so if you have the book and then you're listening to it, you can kind of follow along, and
right.
And that can sometimes, because I know that as an instructor, and I know that you know this also, everybody has different ways that click in their brain to get a message across. Some are sight, some are feel, some are auditory. Everybody has different ways. So it might be, just a thought to throw out there, and think maybe once it's released to maybe eventually release an audio version of it, and then maybe have little pictures in that audio version too. I'm sure there's a way to do that. And
yeah,
it's pretty
I
cool.
had thought about the possibility of maybe doing some videos, making a 10 to 15 minute video to go with each chapter.
Yeah.
That I would then maybe sell as an add-on or something. So I've entertained that idea, and I've still got to do some research there. So at the same time, I may look into that. I think that sounds like a cool idea.
Well, we're real excited about the release of it, and everybody out here in Par Nation, I'm sure, is going to jump on that right away, because it's really a big part of the game, and as you said in the beginning of the podcast, it's a way to knock down shots real quick and to be able to play better, and who the heck doesn't want to play better?
Yeah, right. I certainly do.
We all do. Well, Brandon, it was an absolute pleasure. So I wish you all the luck in the world and success with this new venture. And until we meet again, try to keep it in the short grass.
Thanks again, man. I really appreciate the chance. I had a lot of fun.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Now you can take control of your game right now from your smartphone, tablet, or desktop. Just go to www.parbreakers.com/e-learning. That's www.parbreakers.com/e-learning. Your game will thank you for it.